Hello, today I'm sharing with you part 1 of my process for installing picture frame molding, which is a great way to add some detail to your home without needing a lot of woodworking experience. In this video, I'll take you through how I install it and show you the tricks I've learned along the way. Also, this video goes hand in hand with my blog post on this project, so be sure to check it out for further information. The difference between an orderly project and pulling your hair out is really all in the planning. First, decide on the design. If this is your first time, I highly recommend doing simple rectangles, but really the sky is the limit on this. Take a look around and see what you like. Next, take your measurements. Make a diagram of the room on a piece of paper and mark your measurements for each wall. Also take measurements of electrical outlets, light switches, etc. if they may interfere with the molding. I held the molding up to the wall to get a feel for spacing. No matter what you choose, the easiest way to make it look cohesive is to maintain a constant margin all the way around. Next, lay out your design and calculate your trim lengths. This doesn't have to be pretty, just a quick sketch. In this pic, each X represents my margin, so it makes it easy to calculate the heights and widths of each rectangle. Now that I have my measurements, I make a list of how many of each length I need. I then go a step further and lay out each board that I will cut. This may seem like overkill, but it reduces waste, and when I get in front of my saw, I can focus on getting my lengths and my angles right instead of keeping track of what I've cut so far. Trust me, this is a huge help. When selecting boards, make sure you look down them from the end to make sure they are straight. This will save a lot of frustration down the line. You can see this one here is a little wonky in the middle. I paint 2 coats on each trim piece before cutting. After the first coat, I use a sanding sponge to knock down the wood fibers that may have raised from painting and to make sure the edges are clean. Working on these frames really helped me improve my measuring and cutting skills so that I can move on to more difficult projects. This is a great place to start if you've just been sticking with straight cuts. When making outside cuts, the correct length will be measured from tip to tip, right where the side of the trim hits the wall. Here is the profile of the trim I am using. You can see on the outer edge, it slants in as you move up along the cut. That means when you cut the miter, the length you are using is only valid from that very tip to the point on the other end. So you don't want to mark just anywhere on top of the trim. You want it to be at the intersection of the side of the trim with the bottom. For a visual, here's an example where I mark the length all the way across the board. As I pull the blade down, you will see the shadow of the cut line and how far off of your desired length you could be, depending on where on the board you mark your cut. Even if I marked it on the top of the outside edge, you can still see how the miter would end up being too long. Measuring a long piece of trim with the tape measure is frustrating at best. Using a rigid ruler or tape attached to your work surface is much easier. Here I can use my fingertip on the left to be sure the first miter tip is flush to the end and then mark my cut. After I make my cut, I immediately label the back with the length. If a cut is the first for a certain length, I also add a P so I know that this will be my pattern board. To cut further pieces of the same length, I use that pattern board each time. This keeps mistakes from compounding on each other. To mark a cut from a pattern board, I hold them facing each other and actually just use my fingers to feel that they are flush at the ends. I then mark the very tip at the other end. I always have the outside of the frame facing me. Before I make the cut, I always mentally check that I'm cutting the correct way. The inner frame edge will be shorter than the outer frame edge, and you can see here the inner edge facing the fence and to my right is being cut shorter than the outer edge facing me. And now we are ready to install, which I've covered in part 2 of this project.